No. Oh, there we go. Very good. Very good. There. Okay. Now it seems to be working. Hello, guys. Stefan, Melissa, Joshua. I am just going to start talking about something just until whoever else is going to join us has time to get over here. Hi, guys. I see you all coming on now. Excellent. Very good. Okay, so I'm just going to start off talking about something just to give you guys time to get your questions ready and for everybody to log on. But I did an interview a couple of days ago, and someone asked about the pentagram. Because when we're talking about um, magic and the basic, the first rituals you learn, and how one of the main ones is the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, which you can also do as the invoking ritual. So you're invoking or banishing the pentagram. And the person I was doing the interview with pointed out how a lot of people, when they hear the word pentagram, for whatever reason, due to horror movies or smear campaigns or whatever it is, most people think of that it's something dark or something satanic in some way. And that's a good one, Matt. Well, I'll get back to that in just a second. People think just because they hear the word pentagram that it means something dark because of horror movies or what have you. Uh, Penta, the first part of pentagram just means five, the number five. Um, Originally the pentagram was seen as one of, if not the very first symbol of divinity in the world. It symbolized spirit. When you're drawing the pentagram, whenever you're doing the invoking ritual of the pentagram, uh, first, each point on the pentagram represents something different. The very top point of the pentagram represents spirit. And this leg down here, when you first draw the line from the top down here, you're drawing a line from the world of spirit or from the divine realm down to the realm of earth. And then you go over here and this is air, and then you've got fire and water. And then you go back up to earth. What you're doing whenever you're doing this, when I try to describe to people what the tarot is, one of the things that I point out to them is that the four minor suits, like the wands, the pentacles, the swords, and the cups, these things represent, yes, elements. Like most people know automatically, yes, these are elements. Like cups are the element of water, or swords are the element of air, or wands are the element of fire, or pentacles are the element of earth. But what does that really mean whenever we say that? What like on a practical level, what does that mean to us? What it is, when you're doing tarot, the thing I point out to people is that each suit, not only does it correspond to an element, but it also corresponds to an aspect of us. So, for example, air always represents your intellect, your ability to think, to use logic and reason. Uh, Cups represent our emotional life, and that's everything from the way you feel to your intuition to your dreams and unconscious mind, all that sort of stuff. When you're talking about pentacles are the hardcore flesh and blood physical body. Anything you can touch with the hands, taste with the mouth, see with the eyes, hear with your ears. We're talking about the realm of pentacles. What did I leave out? Wands. Wands represent fire. Well, fire is literally our internal fire. It is our life force. That's what we're talking about whenever we are talking about fire. We are talking about our literal life force energy. So all of these things represent different aspects of us, these elements. Well, think about what you're doing when you're drawing the pentagram. When you're inhaling chi into the earth, and then you start at spirit and you draw the line down and connect all these other elements. What you are doing is drawing spirit, drawing divinity, drawing that divine energy down from heaven into every aspect of your being. You're bringing it down into your mind, you're bringing it down into your emotions, you're bringing it down into your physical body. You're bringing it down into your life force. Whenever you draw the pentagram, not, I always talk about how all of religion, all of magic, all of science was initially based on the study of the stars. That's how we got math and all sorts of other things. That's also what we're drawing. We're drawing a star because that's where pretty much all human knowledge came from. Pretty much everything we know up until really, really recently in modern times, like when we started screwing around with computer stuff, everything up until now, all of our knowledge has been based upon the stars. That's where we developed higher maths, like the Pythagorean theorem and all of these other, forms of mathematics that I can't even come close to understanding or comprehending because I'm not a mathematician. I dropped out of school when I was in ninth grade. So in some ways that did hurt me, the lack of formal education, just because it made me where I don't know a lot about math. But that's what we've been doing. We have been studying the stars. Of course, that's going to be our first symbol of divinity, because that's where we first started to conceive of things like gods, by watching the stars. So whenever you're drawing that spirit down, you are essentially purifying yourself. You are bringing more and more divine energy into every aspect of your being, over and over and over every time you do this ritual, if that makes sense. There is nothing dark, nothing even remotely dark about the pentagram. The word pentagram literally means 5-pointed star. That's all it is. So now I'm going to look at you guys' questions. I hate putting my finger over the lens like that. Let's see. Someone says, have you heard the color purple is rare in nature, or in most cases it's an optical illusion of just combining red and blue and never actually purple pigment? What is the color purple associated with? In magic, we usually associate the color purple with the moon, as well as the sphere of Yesod on the Tree of Life. The sphere of Yesod is where the astral or the energetic level of reality starts. The very bottom sphere on the tree, Malkuth, represents the hardcore physical world, our physical bodies. And what we're looking at in magic when we're talking about the physical world is the physical world is like a vessel that connects all of the energies that flow down from the higher parts of the tree. They all flow down just like divinity, just like divine consciousness coming down through the levels of reality. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at the Tree of Life. It starts with Kether, and Kether is like pure divine brilliant light, which as it filters down starts to take on different qualities and characteristics as it comes down through the tree. It takes on all kinds of different associations and just because color, when you're talking about color is different vibrational aspects of the light spectrum to begin with. So different vibrational aspects of the light spectrum are literally different kinds of energy. Different color lights vibrate at different frequencies. By vibrate at different frequencies, I guess I'm saying some of them are faster than others. Like the color red vibrates at a faster frequency than blue does. That's why blue has like a more calming effect on the nervous system, whereas red is more energizing. At any rate, as the energy comes down through the tree, Yesod is the sphere right before Malkuth, where all of the energy funnels into right before it comes into the vessel. And that's it. So you're using the color purple in visualization anytime you are wanting to invoke or use the energy of Yesod, the energy of any sort of moon entity, whether it be Diana or any of those, Greek or Roman or even Sumerian, all of them were associated with the color purple. That's the reason we memorize these colors and memorize what sphere on the Tree of Life they correspond to, is because whenever you're getting ready to use them in a practical way, that's the color you visualize the energy. And I'll give you an example. You could do something as simple, and it really is. You can do things this simple and it will work. When I first started doing magic and first started learning stuff like this, like how simple it can be, that you don't have to do this huge ritual to get results. If you're just trying to do something small, you don't have to do a 5 hour ritual. You can do something this simple. And at first, you'll think there's no way in hell that changing anything in the world or changing myself or anything else could be this simple, this easy, just by doing a visualization like this. It can. It absolutely can. All you have to do is sit with your eyes closed for a few minutes and direct your attention up to the very top of the universe, if there is a top. If basically it's just a conceptual idea. The universe doesn't have a top, but when you visualize the very top of the universe, what you're telling your subconscious and unconscious mind is that's divinity, that's God. See it shining at the very top of the universe, this brilliant, bright white light. Now, while you're breathing and making it brighter and brighter and brighter, you can also change it to the color associated with the sphere on the tree of life, or associated with the planetary energy. Like, for example, Venus is green, Jupiter is blue, the moon is purple, Saturn is black, Mercury is orange. This is why we memorize these colors. So when you get ready to do this, it's second nature to you what color to think about. You visualize the light at the top of the universe turning that color. So since somebody asked about purple, let's say, for example, one of the things we're doing with the moon is it can be used to enhance your psychic intuition. And I'm not talking about that crazy movie stuff or any of that. By psychic intuition, I'm just talking about your ability to perceive, detect, and work with astral, etheric, chi energy, whatever you want to call it. You just turn the color, visualize it turning purple, and then as you inhale several times, there's no rule for how many times to do this. Just because the more you do it, the more energy you're putting into it. You turn it purple, keep inhaling and seeing it glow brighter and brighter and brighter, and then you see it come down like a beam of light and completely saturate yourself. You can either do it visualizing in your mind like an image of yourself standing against a movie screen and see the light come down and completely saturate the figure of you standing there, or you can feel it, like see it come down directly on your physical body and feel your physical body and your aura up over and over and over. The main point when you're doing all these things is consistency. You want to do it, not just one time, but over and over and over. Let me see. I'm going to look through some of your questions. Someone says, if you invoke the 4 archangels of Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, and Aquarius, Lion, Bull, Eagle, Man, is that a way to invoke the Lamasu, thereby invoking undiluted magic and energy from the source? That's exactly what that is, and that's why that was considered like such a icon in past civilizations and generations, the Lamasu. What they were trying to do is preserve these techniques, these exercises, so that they would survive into modern times, and they did it through imagery. That's what pretty much all of magic is based on. Whenever you're learning all these rituals, like when you first start learning the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram, all you're doing is learning like the weakest form of invoking the energies associated with the Lamasu. Earth, air, fire, and water. And then you move from the lesser invoking up to like the supreme invoking, where you are invoking those same 4 elements, but only on a celestial level. The supreme invoking ritual of the pentagram. That's like the bigger, much more powerful version of the lesser banishing. And then you go up even from that to an even more powerful version, which is the opening of the watchtowers, where you're using Enochian instead of Hebrew. Enochian is thought to be a much, much older, more powerful language. Enochian is a crazy thing. People have looked at it, linguists have looked at it, and they've said This has never been a language that was spoken on Earth before. It has no roots in any other language that's now known in the world. However, they know that it's a language because they say Enochian has grammar and syntax just like any other language, whether it be, Latin or English or Italian, whatever it is. There are certain rules that languages follow, and Enochian follows those rules. But it's not anything that's ever been spoken before. In magic, they used to say that what John Dee said was that this is the language that the angels spoke amongst themselves, and that's why there's so much power in it. Is there a good source to learn more about the linguistics of Enochian? Honestly, there's probably a million books out there on Enochian magic. It's not something that I use very much, but really, if you just go to Amazon and type in Enochian magic, you're probably going to pull up a ton of different books. I would say, start with any of them. If you the further you go back, the older ones are going to be harder to understand, just because they're probably going to be written in more archaic language. So I would stick with something pretty modern. Let me go back through your questions. Are animals closer to divinity because they are free from the ego conditioning that we identify with? No. That's one of those things that a lot of people believe it just because of the romanticism and everything else involved with it. But animals function from the state of consciousness that we used to function from. We say now in magic that there's 4 parts of the soul. And each one does different things. The very lowest part of the soul, think of it as almost like an obelisk, those Egyptian obelisks that are cut into 4 parts. The very bottom part of the soul, the bottom quarter of it, is called the Nephesh. And the Nephesh is considered to be the most animalistic aspect of the soul. It is it's more like almost like there's less of a distinguishing personality there than there is in the higher parts of the soul. It's more about survival and it's just a previous form of consciousness that all things eventually are evolve through and build on as they go along. And you can tell even in animals that some of them have they're at different places in their level of consciousness. You come across some animals, and it can be any kind of animal, like from a house pet to a jungle cat. You see some of them are like really animalistic, like they have no interest in reacting with this, like with us at all. Others veer towards almost being like people. They become really, really attached to us and interact with us almost like a baby would. One thing, I don't know if this is true or not, but I had even read somewhere that cats, like whenever cats are speaking to each other, that they tend to communicate on a sound wave frequency that we can't detect, like human ears can't pick it up. However they communicate with each other, that when animals are like meowing or cats are meowing at us, what they're doing, since they are deliberately speaking at a frequency that we can hear, to them meowing at us is almost like us speaking baby talk to them, like they're deliberately trying to communicate with you. So even amongst animals, you've got different levels of that consciousness. Some of them are almost like a group mind. When you're looking at things like fish, certain kinds of fish, I've loved aquariums my whole life, but you'll notice certain kinds of fish almost have no mind of their own, But when you put like 5 of them together, they will act like one entity. They all like swim in the same formation all the time. They follow each other whenever they move. It's almost like there's just one brain directing them. You see someone else's question. Someone said, how would you compare the Norse 9 worlds with the Tree of Life? I find the visual parallel interesting. I'm honestly not that familiar with the Norse pantheon, other than that, all of these religions are the same thing. Even when you're talking about these ancient pagan religions, that's the reason that, for example, in the Olympian pantheon in ancient Greece, there were 12 Olympian gods because they represented the 12 constellations of the zodiac. All of these things, like the later religions, whether you're talking about the Vikings, or you're talking about the Greeks, or you're talking about the Romans, and by later, I mean people that came far, far after ancient Mesopotamia, far after ancient Sumer. By the time ancient Greece came along, Sumer had been extinct for thousands of years. People no longer even knew that it had existed. We didn't even discover it again until the very late 1800s or very early 1900s. So there were thousands of years when humanity was not even aware that ancient Sumer, the city, or the place in the ancient Near East, had even existed. So all of these old god stories, it's like that game little kids play where you whisper something in somebody's ear, and then they whisper it in somebody's ear, and then they whisper it in somebody's ear, and it goes all around the room, and by the time it gets back around to you and the person says it out loud, it doesn't bear any resemblance to what the original person said. That's the same way as all these old stories. All of these other stories, like the Norse gods, the Greek gods, the Roman gods, all they are retellings of these ancient Sumerian entities. That's it. When you're talking about, for example, Zeus, it's Enlil. It's exact same thing. When you're talking about Loki, you're talking about Enki. All it is later civilizations had lost the original names, and they had been translated through all these different languages. Even when you're talking about all these goddesses of love, everything from Aphrodite and Venus to the Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene, all of them are just retellings of Inanna, the ancient Sumerian goddess that was the Queen of Heaven. That's why we call Mary the Queen of Heaven now. Or it's why Catholics did. Let me see here. Yes, telephone. That was the name of it. Let's see. Someone says Enochian vision magic is a great start, and it actually is. That's the name of a book. I had that book before when I was in prison. If you're looking for a good place to start, and keep in mind when I say start, a good place to start, Enochian is not a kind of magic that you just start doing. You really do build your way up to it, because it is compared to everything else in magic, it's a pretty complicated system. You've got to create these Enochian tablets and all sorts of other stuff. Even basic beginning Enochian is going to be really advanced compared to anything else in magic. It's going to be so far beyond something like the lesser invoking or the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, that it's almost like you're dealing with an entire different subject. Someone says, from a novice standpoint, would it be beneficial, Riley asked this, to run through the more complex rituals for practice, or is there a negative effect if you are not prepared? A draining of energy, perhaps? I honestly don't think there would be any negative effect from doing, really it depends on what complex rituals you're talking about. But if you're talking about something like, say, in the supreme invoking ritual, the pentagram, which is what you do when you're leading up to doing Enochian, I would say that if you don't know what you're doing, like if you're just starting out, the only thing that I would do, that I would follow up with, is whenever you get finished, like when you're practicing, however you're doing it, whenever you get finished, always closed down by doing the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, because that's what you're doing is, once again, cleansing the area of any energy that may be lingering, as well as bringing it all back into harmony, bringing it into balance, bringing all four of those energies into a balanced state, so that there's no danger in it, as long as you do the lesser banishing afterwards. There may not even be any danger in it without doing that. If you grasp what you're doing and use the energy, don't just leave it hanging around in some way. But magic is not nearly like when you're talking about this stuff, like the pentagram rituals and hexagram rituals and all this sort of thing. This is not at all what people are talking about whenever they talk about magic being dangerous. This is like really bottom level sort of stuff. It doesn't have to stay that way. You can. I guess what I'm trying to say is, someone once told me that if you take someone who is a master, they can raise more energy by doing something like twisting their ring than a neophyte could, or a group of neophytes could, doing a huge 3-hour-long ritual, 5 of them together doing it. Really, it depends entirely on the magician, how much power that they can bring in. Let me see. I'm trying to scroll through and get some of the early ones. Someone says, and this is a really good question. Someone says, how would shedding the ego affect your personality afterwards? I don't know if shedding is the word that I would use. What we call it is the dissolution of self in magic. And, ego is something that's almost like fingernails or hair. It's always there. It will always be there. Something about you will continually reproduce it. Just like when you clip your fingernails off, they grow back. They don't stay gone forever. It's the same way whenever you do see through the ego, when the ego dissolves. The ego is just, a bunch of firing synapses. When you see through those, you're not attached to them anymore. So even though it constantly arises, ego constantly replenish itself, like fingernails or hair or whatever it is, you're not attached to it. And when you're not attached to it, you don't experience as much energy from things like anger, depression, despair. You're just, what you're doing is, somebody says the ego is what keeps the body alive. Things like hunger, thirst, etc. Yes, that's what the function of ego is supposed to be. The function of ego is supposed to be to maintain this physical form, not for us to get lost in and identify with and think we are the ego. The ego is not evil. The ego is not bad. What's bad, and not even bad, it's just where the slip happens, where the fall happens, is when we start to identify as the ego instead of the higher self. Somebody says, and our function to cross the abyss is to dissolve the ego. No, the dissolution of the ego is the first step of crossing the abyss. Somebody says, is there a reason you wear your ring on your index finger? Actually, it's just because this is the same wedding ring I've worn ever since I was in prison, and it never fit completely properly to begin with. And then whenever I got out and could actually start eating healthy food, my body began to be shaped completely different from whenever I was eating garbage in prison. So I lost a lot of weight. And it just doesn't fit on the finger that people traditionally wear their rings on. Let me see. If somebody says, and this is a really good question, this is a really good one. Fustart says, Is it usual when you're progressing with your magical practice to feel more disconnected from others who are not on the path? Unfortunately, yeah, it is. And the reason I say unfortunately is because sometimes it can be lonely. You know, in the beginning stages, you will feel like you will no longer be interested in the things that people around you are interested in. You know, most people's attention is focused entirely on this world, on, you know, anything from celebrity gossip to uh, social media to, you know, people chase things in this world that they think is going to give them a sense of fulfillment in some way. And the further you go along the path of magic, the more you realize there is nothing out there that is going to give you any sense of fulfillment at all, not for any long extended period of time. So you start to lose interest in that stuff out there. You start to lose interest in the world. And it gets to the point where it can be difficult for you to relate to other people just because even the conversations they have, you're just, you don't care. You know, the things that most people are talking about, most people, you know, they haven't developed those faculties where they're even aware of anything beyond the physical world yet. So they're talking about things that will seem so just mundane to you. And honestly, I think this is why so many people also experience so much depression, is because the only thing they're perceiving is the physical level of reality. And it's like, here, there's no answers, there's no meaning, there's nothing here, you know, of any real wisdom, anything that's going to make your consciousness expand. So you're just not interested in this stuff, and most people are not going to be interested in the things that you're interested in. And even if they are interested, to be honest, most people are not going to be able to understand it anyway, you know, because they're not going to have done the work that you've done that brought you to the place where you could understand it. Most people are not doing that work. So in a lot of ways, it'll be like you're speaking a completely different language than most people are. Also, though, I would honestly say maybe that lonely aspect only lasts for a certain period of time, because you'll find you know, in the early times, you might find yourself wishing that you had other people that you could talk to about this, that you could like meet up with. I'm going to get back to that in just a second. I see somebody asking about eating. What was I talking about? Oh, you know, you'll, as you go along further and further and further along this path, you don't even seek to really connect with people anymore. If it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, your life will become your work. I guess what it is, you will discover what your will is, and by will I mean what you came into this world to do. And when you know what you came into this world to do, and you apply yourself to doing it, then everything else falls away. Is part of crossing the abyss confusion? It can be confusing. I don't know if I would say technically, but I mean, if you don't know what you're experiencing, you know, you can go through it. When I first started experiencing it, like the dissolution of self, I didn't understand what was happening. I literally thought I was dying. You know, when you experience yourself coming apart, it feels like you're leaving this world. Like part of you is disintegrating. And if you don't know what you're experiencing, especially in the West, you know, in the West, we don't have people telling us about this stuff. We don't have people guiding us through these things, teaching us about this stuff the way they do in certain Eastern places. You know, if you grow up in the East, you're probably at least familiar with some of these things, these concepts, because of Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism. Here, we're not familiar with any of this kind of stuff. So it can be scary just because if you start going through this and don't know what you're going through, and there's nobody that can help you, which is also one of the reasons that magical orders and lodges can be so important. Real ones. I don't mean just a group of people who, nobody's crossed the abyss, nobody's attained the knowledge and conversation of the HGA. They just decided they were going to do magic together. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about orders. By orders, I mean people who have this information and have passed it down the line back to God knows when. When you have contact with people who have done this work, it can be tremendously helpful in easing, just the confusion and the anxiety and everything else that you may experience. Somebody's asking about eating and diets and all this kind of stuff. Let me see. How would you know if you have your solar body made and if you've slipped into it? Trust me, you're not going to just. I mean, this is something that takes years to do. You will have been working for years, doing deliberate, concentrated rituals to build this thing, to form this thing. Yes, teacher-student relationship is super important. Exactly. But the solar body or the body of light or the rainbow body, these are specific techniques that are done to build this thing. And somebody else last night asked a question. When I was doing the talk with Sean Korn, somebody brought up a question that I wanted to answer and we didn't get to. Someone was saying, after you have formed the solar body and the physical body has died, does the solar body still need to be maintained? Like, do you have to still keep taking in energy to nourish it? Absolutely. The thing is, for you only learn how to do this. For some reason, you have to do this while you're alive. You can only do it in the physical world. You can't do it when you're in between this state, when you're in between lives, when you're not incarnated in a physical form. You have to learn how to do it while you're still alive. This is what they mean by, most people do not become aware of that energetic level of reality until the physical body dies. And by that point, it's going to become, they're not going to understand it. They're not going to know what's going on. They're not going to know how to interact with it or move in it or any of that sort of stuff. So what you're doing is training yourself to exist on the level of reality that you will exist in after your physical body dies while you're still alive, if that makes sense. It has to be done while you're alive, and yes, the solar body has to be maintained. Yeah, and that's the reason most people go through the second death, is because they're not able to maintain their energy body. They don't know how to take in energy to sustain it, to keep feeding it, keep it going. I'm going to get one more question. We're running a little bit long. Brandy says, can you touch on the crystallization of the aura? That's exactly what you're doing when you're doing, whether you want to call it building the solar body or creating the rainbow body, as the Tibetan Buddhists call it, or the body of light, as it's called in ceremonial magic. That's what crystallizing the aura is. Crystallizing your aura is building the solar body, or building the light body, or building the rainbow body, whatever you want to call it. You're crystallizing your aura so that it will continue to maintain the shape and pattern it has while you are alive after you've died. And that's the vehicle that allows your consciousness to keep functioning and growing. The thing is also, about maintaining the solar body, there's no limit to how powerful that the solar body can become. Basically, your goal is to reach a point where you decide when, where, and how you will come in and out of this physical world. It's like, for example, in the Bible stories after Jesus is crucified, remember how all of his disciples go and barricade themselves off into this room, into this building that has no windows, there's only one door and it's locked, and they say all of a sudden he's in the middle of them, he's just there in the room, and just a second ago there was nobody there and the room is completely sealed. It's said that when the person has completely and absolutely develop the solar body. Those are the sorts of things that you can do. You come into this realm when, where, and how you desire. The thing is, you by that point, I have a friend whose teacher is really, really advanced. Like this guy is literally a master. You know, that's what my friend even calls him. He calls him his master. But he asked him one time. He said, "Why is it that people who are like the most advanced in magic, like these masters, why do they not really do anything to change the world? You know, why don't they manifest things or change things that cause huge changes in the world if they're that powerful?" And what he told him was, because the further you go along the path, the less you are in this world. You spend almost all of your existence not even registering this going on anymore. This will become nothing to you. Your mind is with God, with divinity. So you know you're really, and you also change this world just by being here. You're basically a living talisman that has an effect on every single thing you come in contact with. Let's see. Someone says, "I've noticed some people hardly even have an aura at all." You know, that's because of a lot of different reasons. The healthier a person is, the more the energy system extends out from the body. You know, when you're talking about someone who's right next door to death, who's getting ready to die, their aura will barely extend beyond their skin. You know, it's not going to be like a normal healthy person, your average healthy person. Um, their energy system will extend about arm's length from the body around, and some people's extend a lot further than that. When you're talking about people who, you know, when I talk about how some of these rituals are like doing calisthenics for the aura, that's what you're doing. You're causing the aura to grow and expand. You guys are asking a ton of really great questions. I've been reading, people can cross the abyss without being magicians. Um, you guys are asking some really, really great stuff, and I wish we could do all of it right now. Just keep going. Unfortunately, I have to get going, and I went longer than I was even wanting to. I'm trying to keep these things to 30 minutes, just so you know, I don't bore the hell out of you, and you can take them all in one sitting. Can you cross the abyss during near-death experience? Yeah, it can happen for a lot of reasons. I think it happened to if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle, the man who wrote The Power of Now, and what's the other one he wrote? Something like A New Earth or A New World or something like that. It happened to him spontaneously. You know, I think it was because he kind of hit rock bottom emotionally. A New Earth, yeah, A New Earth. He kind of hit rock bottom emotionally. You know, he reached a point where he realized humans are insane, and like really, truly, humans are mad, but they don't even realize what they're doing. And whenever he reached a point where he kind of hit rock bottom in his emotional life, it caused his individuality to unravel almost instantaneously, and he experienced crossing the abyss without ever doing a ritual. They even say in magic that you may be like in the grocery store right next to someone who is this close to complete and absolute awakening, but they don't know it. You don't know it. That doesn't mean things aren't happening there. And this person may have never practiced a magic ritual in their entire life, but they will be on the verge of complete and absolute disintegration of ego and awakening. Okay, guys, thank you for bearing with me, and I will be back here as soon as I can, hopefully within the next few days. Yeah, yeah, I got a whole lot more interviews coming up this week, and I will keep you guys informed, and I'll post them I'll post them on here in case you're not on social media. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Okay, I will talk to you guys later. I hope you have an amazing day. And these questions that you're asking, if I didn't get to to your question, write it down and ask it again when we do this again, because there's some really great questions here that I don't want to lose. I want to go back to these because it's like every single time we do this, you're bringing it up to the new level. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you later. Love you guys, and bye-bye.